Miles Anderson, the National Member of Parliament for Waitaki, joins us now to talk about an issue that is going to become, you will hear a lot more about it, just quietly. It's bedeviling his constituents, particularly his farming constituents, but it's also, it has to be said, an issue that will continue to bedevil many farmers in rural areas over the next wee while until there is some change in Wellington. And Miles joins us now. Miles, lovely to have you back on the show again. Good morning to you.
Morning, Michael. How are you?
Good. Are you going into urgency again this week?
I would expect so, yeah.
So you've got a big legislative agenda. Just explain to us, because most of us don't know, what is urgency? I mean, we know that you sit, but what is the difference between what you do with urgency and what you do with a normal parliamentary sitting day?
So urgency is obviously extended hours, as you said, but it also means the legislation that's been repealed in our case, or bits of legislation that have been added to, don't go through the select committee process. All three legislative processes happen in the chamber, and the debate has happened in the chamber, and then the amended suggestions, if you like, from people were put forward and voted on in the chamber.
So you start your day, usually you start a parliamentary day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What are you starting under urgency at 9 o'clock in the morning, are you?
That's, yes, urgency when it occurs will start at what will happen normally is a week is Tuesday they'll go into urgency normally after question time, and then urgency will go until it's lifted, which could be, who knows, Friday, Saturday this week, Friday probably. And the select committees, etc., are truncated, so when the House is sitting, you have to get special leave to run a select committee, as opposed to the normal sitting hours when select committees will run from 8 in the morning till 1 o'clock normally, and then you have lunch and the House sitting starts.
Okay. All right. Now, on this issue to deal with plans, this is an issue in Waitaki, but we'll use this as illustrative because I suspect that it's not just in Waitaki. I know it's in Otago as well, and probably throughout the country. Your local farmers and your local council are getting very concerned that plans that were brought in by the previous government that will affect water and land plans and councils and the way in which they implement them are still actually the law and will affect councils who are mandated under that law to carry on with things that make farming much harder in many ways, and will actually, in some cases, strike out some farming activities in certain places as a consequence of those plans going ahead. Now, the National Party said that they would get rid of them, or at least review them in their agricultural policy. You did say that you would get rid of Te Mana o Te Wai, which drives the National Freshwater Plans. When is this going to happen? Because it seems that councils are still required to obey the law.
So it doesn't just affect farmland, it affects all land. I mean, there's some residential and a lot of lifestyle blocks that have been affected in the Waitaki district. And the other councils, when they're planning process, and of course they all seem to be, they're not succinct. Every district council has a different 10-year plan process.
Yep.
So I think the Gore District Council is going through the same process at the moment. But anyway, the issue in the Waitaki, I guess, is the same as the others, is where these designations have been put over large swathes of land that the land owners aren't particularly happy because, one, it's freehold land, two, they have had very little input into the process. It's pretty much a desktop exercise, and their view is, and my view is too, if the land's freehold and those significant natural areas and the outstanding natural features and the sites and areas of significance to Maori are there now after 180 years, it means that the landowners obviously respect the importance of those and have been looking after them anyway. So what is being proposed is that these overlays get put on the district planning maps, and that will restrict the ability of the landowners to undertake various activities that they have normally been able to undertake. Without
so the things you're talking about are councils deciding what are the outstanding natural features in a particular area, and then what the sites and areas of significance to Maori are. Now, in many cases, you don't know what those are, but if you start to put them over, as you say, private farming land, and say, right, well, we've designated this as an outstanding natural feature and this is of significance to Maori, then what you're saying is that the private property right of the farmers who might have previously been farming that land is suspended, yeah?
Yes, well, there certainly will be a different practical sense to undertake activities in those designated areas, or in many cases they will those areas you won't be allowed to do anything in, and there'll be a buffer zone around those areas that will also be affected.
Understood. Now that won't just be for Waitaki, that'll be throughout the country as well, as councils, as you say, do their 10-year plans and overlay the changes to the Resource Management Act, etc. What about the regional council, though? In Otago, for example, they are continuing with their land and water plan despite having that land and water plan largely governed by Te Mana o Te Wai, that's the Maori underlay of the freshwater regime, which is, again, all throughout New Zealand. Your party promised to get rid of it, but it's still there, and they're still carrying on despite some attempt from Wellington to suggest it wasn't a good idea. Do you intend to intervene there and say stop until we've changed the legislation?
So I've written a letter to the Minister, Chris Bishop, around the Waitaki District Plan stuff.
Yeah.
And I expect a formal response in the very near future, which hopefully will outline to councils and to people what the government intends and what the government's going to do around putting a halt, a temporary halt, if you like, to these processes. Both Minister Bishop and Minister Simmons are working on something around the land and water plan stuff at the regional councils around the country are looking to implement. The big problem with a lot of this stuff is, Michael, is it's very subjective. So depending on the planner, one council will have very draconian rules and the council next door will have rules that are far more workable.
Yeah, there's no consistency. You're absolutely right.
No.
Yeah. But having said that, let's just take Otago's example, but it would be duplicated in Taranaki, Hawke's Bay, a variety of other provinces in New Zealand as well. You've got councils that are still making plans. They're going to truncate a great deal of agricultural and horticultural business in their regions because they're conducting it under the old plans that the Labour Party put in, and one could regard them as relatively activist and radical plans in comparison to what had gone beforehand. You've asked them to stop, they're not stopping. What's the next step